My name is Caleb Turner. I'm a 42-year-old husband, father, and until recently, a man who only believed in what he could see and explain. I wasn't an atheist, but God was more of an idea than a reality to me. I spent my Sundays on the couch, scrolling through sports channels, telling myself I'd figure out faith someday. I didn't realize how close that someday was. I'm sharing this because my heart stopped beating for 7 minutes last winter. 7 minutes that erased everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what lies beyond. The doctors called it a miracle when I came back. But what I saw during those 7 minutes was no miracle. It was a warning. When I died, there was no bright tunnel at first, just an empty silence, cold and infinite. I felt like I was falling, pulled by a gravity that gripped my soul. But then, in a flash, I was standing somewhere entirely different. A place so overwhelming that even now, I struggled to put it into words. That's when I saw him, Jesus. His eyes were like fire and oceans all at once, and in his presence, every secret I'd buried, every sin I'd justified, came rushing to the surface. Without saying a word, he showed me something that turned my soul inside out. It wasn't just heaven's beauty that left me speechless, but who was missing from it. People I had always assumed would be there. And then came the most terrifying part, when he revealed why. I know how this sounds. I know you might think this is some attention-seeking story. Honestly, I wish it was. But what I saw, what Jesus showed me, is something I can't keep to myself. Because if even half of you listening have been living the way I was, then we're all in far more danger than we realize. If you think you know what heaven is like, you might want to stick around. Because I promise, you have no idea. But before we dive into this journey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. It would be great to feel connected, even across the distance. Also, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts on this near-death experience. Let's keep the conversation open and honest, learning from each other's perspectives as we walk through this revelation together. Sit back, stay curious, and let's begin. Growing up in a small town in Kentucky, I was the kind of guy who believed in hard work and straight talk. For most of my life, faith was just a hand-me-down tradition, something my mom talked about at Sunday dinners but never quite stuck with me. I worked as a crisis counselor at a rehabilitation center, helping people fight battles I secretly didn't believe anyone could win. If you asked me, I'd tell you I was a good man, even if I didn't pray much or crack open a Bible unless I was searching for a quote to comfort a client. My wife, Emily, was the true believer in our family. Every Sunday, without fail, she'd drag our 2 kids to church while I stayed behind to catch up on sleep or fix things around the house. She'd leave her Bible open on the kitchen counter, verses underlined in bright yellow, hoping I might glance at them. I never did. Truthfully, I thought faith was just a crutch for people who couldn't handle reality. I figured I had everything under control, until the night I realized how wrong I was. It was a Tuesday evening in January. The roads were slick with ice, and the wind howled through the cracked windows of my old Ford truck. I was driving home late from the center, replaying an argument I'd had with Emily about God and how I wasn't setting a good example for the kids. I remember gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, my breath fogging up the glass as I muttered, "If you're really out there, show me something real." I didn't know it then, but that was a prayer, and it was about to be answered. By the time I pulled into our driveway, a dull ache was gnawing at my chest, creeping up my left arm. I brushed it off as stress, figured a drink and some sleep would fix it. But when I stumbled into the kitchen, Emily's face turned the color of milk. She tried to get me to the hospital, but I waved her off. That was my first mistake. Within an hour, I was on the floor, gasping for air. The last thing I remember before the darkness swallowed me was Emily's voice on the phone, cracked and terrified, begging the 911 operator to hurry. When I woke up, the fluorescent lights above me flickered like stars through a windshield. The doctors said it was a heart attack, brought on by a blocked artery. They moved fast, wheeled me into surgery, talking in code I couldn't understand. I tried to focus on their voices, anything to drown out the panic roaring in my head. But then came the cold. It started in my fingertips, spreading through me until I was shivering so hard the nurses had to hold me down. I heard someone shout about my heart rate crashing, a flatline beep, and then nothing. When the darkness lifted, I was standing beside my own body, watching the doctors work frantically, paddles jolting my chest. I should have been terrified, but I felt detached, like a bystander in a movie theater. I noticed details I'd never paid attention to, the tired lines around the nurse's eyes, the clock ticking above the door, even the tear on Emily's cheek as she clung to my hand. Then the room stretched, walls bending like a rubber band pulled too tight, and I was being pulled backward, upward, through layers of shadows and light. I didn't pass through any tunnels or see pulley gates. Instead, I was suspended above a vast, endless sea of darkness, stars scattered like diamonds on black velvet. It felt ancient, alive, and terrifyingly aware of me. I heard voices, not words, but waves of sorrow and joy, crashing against my soul. And then I was standing somewhere else entirely. The light that had wrapped around me like a mother's arms slowly unraveled, and I found myself standing in a vast expanse that words can barely capture. The sky above glowed with hues I had never seen, and the air itself pulsed with a melody, a symphony without instruments. Every note seemed to hum with one purpose, to glorify God. I was overwhelmed not by fear, but by the sheer intensity of love that radiated from every corner. It was as if the essence of peace itself flowed through me. In the distance, a brilliant light outshone all else, a throne that seemed to be woven from the very fabric of light and life. Surrounding it were multitudes of angels, each distinct, some with 6 wings, others with eyes that covered their forms. They moved in a rhythm, bowing and lifting voices that echoed across the expanse. The words they sang were not in any language I knew, yet I understood perfectly. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was, and is to come. Every part of me trembled with awe. My knees gave out, and I found myself kneeling on what looked like a sea of glass, clear as crystal, yet warm to the touch. From the throne, waves of light rolled forward, touching everything and everyone, and where the light passed, colors danced, brighter and purer than anything on earth. The throne itself was indescribable. The one who sat upon it was concealed by a brilliance so intense that my eyes burned, yet I could not look away. And then I realized, this was the Father's throne, the source of all life and light. Worship wasn't just a song, it was life itself. Every breath, every motion of the angels, even the shimmer of the sea of glass, was worship. It was as if heaven's very existence revolved around one purpose, to glorify the one on the throne. I watched as angelic beings cast golden crowns before the throne, their faces radiant with devotion. They cried out praises that seemed to ripple through my spirit, drawing out every memory, every hidden thing within me, and laying it bare before God's presence. But instead of shame, I felt a surge of acceptance, a love so powerful that it drowned out every fear. In that moment, I realized that heaven's core wasn't just golden streets or jeweled walls. It was this unending worship, this eternal acknowledgement of God's glory. As I beheld the throne, a yearning rose within me, fierce and undeniable. It wasn't enough just to witness heaven. I wanted to see Jesus, the one who bore the nails, who spoke life into the broken, who loved me even at my worst. That desire grew until it consumed every thought. A path opened before me, and the light seemed to urge me forward. Angels glanced my way, some smiling knowingly, as if they understood. Trees that lined the path bent slightly, leaves shimmering like emerald glass, and I heard a whisper in the wind. He is going to see the King. The air was thick with a sweetness that clung to my senses, and with each step, my anticipation built, heart pounding in my chest though I was no longer bound by flesh. The path opened into a great clearing, and there he was, Jesus. His back was to me, clothed in robes so white they glowed, a crown upon his head that blazed with a light that seemed to contain every color of the universe. Around him stood angels and a vast multitude, redeemed souls, radiant and whole, faces lifted in joy. I fell to my knees, not out of fear, but overwhelmed by his presence. The scars were there, on his hands, visible even from a distance. I couldn't lift my eyes to his face, so I stared at his feet, which shone like burnished bronze, and all I could do was weep. My voice broke with the only words I could manage. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In that moment, it hit me with a force that would have shattered my earthly body. I was in heaven solely because of him. It was his blood, his sacrifice, his victory that had opened these gates for me. My gratitude poured out, and with it came memories of every failure, every sin. But instead of condemnation, there was only love, warm and unrelenting. Then he spoke, not with lips, but directly into my spirit, a voice that was at once thunderous and tender. My child, rise. Trembling, I obeyed, lifting my eyes to his face. The eyes that met mine were unlike any I had ever seen, filled with a compassion so deep it seemed to draw out every wound I'd ever carried. In them, I saw no shadow of judgment, only a love that saw me as if I had never sinned. And then Jesus smiled, and it felt as if the whole of heaven brightened. This, he said, gesturing to the throne and the worship surrounding us, is the seventh heaven, where my throne is and where worship never ends." His words were not merely information. They seemed to imprint themselves onto my very being, resonating with a truth I couldn't deny. "But this is not all," Jesus continued, his gaze piercing yet gentle. "There is much more to heaven than what you see here. I will show you, for you must tell the world." His hand extended, and as his fingers touched my shoulder, light flooded my vision. In an instant we moved, not like earthly movement, but a seamless shift, like thought becoming reality. The scene transformed, and I found myself standing beneath a vast sky streaked with golden clouds, wind curling around us like a living thing. I looked at Jesus, bewildered, but he smiled, his eyes warm. "This," he said, "is the first heaven." The sky stretched endlessly, not empty but alive, rippling with angels who moved as if conducting the very elements. Storms gathered and dispersed at their command. Snow cascaded from unseen storehouses, each flake shimmering like diamonds before vanishing into the breeze. I watched, breathless, as thunderheads rolled, not with menace but with a power that sang of God's sovereignty. "Every storm, every breeze, every drop of rain," Jesus explained, "obeys my Father's will. Nothing is random, for all is part of his divine design." As I gazed upward, the sky itself seemed to sing, a soundless song that reverberated through me, a reminder that even nature's fiercest tempests bowed to God's command. And yet, there was more, so much more. "Come," Jesus said, his hand still resting on my shoulder. "I have more to show you." As the light flared once more, the heavens shifted again, and my spirit quivered with both awe and anticipation. If this was only the beginning, what lay ahead would be beyond imagination. The radiance surrounding Jesus dimmed, but his presence remained blindingly powerful. I clung to every word he spoke, each syllable pulsing through me with a warmth that melted every fear. With a simple gesture, he beckoned me forward, and in an instant, I was drawn through layers of existence, realms stacked like pages in an endless book. The light around us faded, replaced by an oppressive gloom. It was not darkness as I knew it, but a suffocating shadow that seemed to drain the very essence of light. My spirit tensed involuntarily, sensing the weight of ancient sorrows and sealed judgments. "Behold the second heaven, the prison of fallen angels," Jesus declared, his voice steady and resolute. This realm was vast and hauntingly still, an endless expanse of twilight where fractured mountains loomed and rivers of pitch flowed silently. The sky was a swirling abyss, bruised in hues of indigo and crimson, as if stained by battles long past. It was a place where time felt stretched, each second a lingering echo of ages forgotten. I could hear them before I saw them, the whispers. They were faint yet relentless, a chorus of anguished voices woven into the very wind. As I struggled to make sense of the sounds, I noticed them, figures bound in chains that shimmered with celestial fire, their eyes hollow and fixed upon distant stars. They were once glorious, angels of might and wisdom. Now they were shadows of their former selves, twisted and mourning beneath shackles that pulsed with divine authority. Some stared skyward, mouths moving in silent prayers, while others clawed at the ground, their chains dragging through ash and bone. "Who are they, Lord?" I breathed, my voice tremulous. "The betrayers," Jesus replied, his gaze unflinching. "Those who abandoned their purpose and led mankind astray, lusting for dominion that was never theirs to claim." He spoke of secrets, truths traded for power and forbidden paths unveiled to mortals. Knowledge that twisted like poisoned vines around human hearts, igniting desires never meant to burn. As his words settled, I felt a shudder pass through me, for in his eyes was a grief too deep to measure. We moved past endless rows of these chained ones, and I saw how they recoiled at his presence, not out of defiance, but a dreadful recognition of lost glory. Some wept without tears, others were silent, their forms contorted with regret. "Is there no hope for them?" I asked, unable to silence the question. "Justice is fulfilled here," he answered gently, though his eyes bore a sorrow that transcended time. "They chose their fate and sealed it with their rebellion. But know this, all that is unjust shall be accounted for." In that moment, I understood. This realm was not just a prison but a testimony, a reminder that even those who once stood in God's light were not exempt from his judgment. Justice was not delayed nor denied, only perfected in ways my mortal mind could scarcely grasp. Then, without warning, a tremor rippled through the ground. The shadows recoiled as a presence stirred, a figure larger, darker, bound in chains as thick as iron trees. Its eyes blazed with hatred, and when they fixed upon me, I felt the chill of 1,000 winters. But Jesus did not flinch. His mere gaze caused the darkness to retreat, and the chains to tighten with a sound like thunder. The creature writhed, silenced beneath a power that needed no display. "Do not fear," Jesus assured me, his words a balm. "Their power is broken, and their end is sure." As we moved forward, the gloom began to fade, giving way to a horizon streaked with glimmers of dawn. My spirit lifted with a mixture of relief and wonder, though questions still burned within me. "There is more I must show you," Jesus said, his eyes kind yet resolute. "Much more." And with that, the shadows dissolved, and I was drawn upward once again, into light unblemished and eternal. For a moment, there was only brightness, so pure it seemed to sing. My spirit, weary from the darkness of the realm before, soaked in the warmth like parched earth beneath spring rain. Then the light softened, revealing a path of what seemed like molten gold, stretching forward into an expanse so vivid I could hardly breathe. "Behold," Jesus said, his voice tender yet commanding, "the third heaven." Before us lay a realm unlike anything I could have imagined. It was not merely a garden, but a living masterpiece, a kingdom of color and light, where every blade of grass shimmered with hues unseen on earth. Trees rose majestically, their leaves whispering secrets with every breeze, and flowers bloomed in cascades of gold, violet, and sapphire, releasing fragrances so intoxicating that my spirit trembled. The sky above was a canvas of crystal and flame, glowing softly as if dawn and sunset had been woven together. Rivers coursed through the land, their waters as clear as polished glass, catching the radiance of the sky and splitting it into streams of living light. Yet, beneath the beauty, there was a power, ancient and uncontainable, that made the air itself hum with glory. As we moved forward, I noticed figures among the trees, men and women clothed in garments that glistened like spun sunlight. Their faces were aglow with peace so profound that my heart ached to comprehend it. Some gathered in joyous fellowship beneath vines heavy with fruit that gleamed like jewels. Others knelt at the river's edge, hands submerged in the water that sparkled with flecks of divine fire. And then a sound, so soft at first I thought it a memory, rose around us. A chorus of voices, singing not in words but in a language of light, each note a burst of color that spread across the sky. Their song was not of sorrow or pleading, but of fulfilled promises, the joy of souls at rest. I could barely whisper the question, "Is this Eden?" "The eternal Eden," Jesus affirmed, his eyes warm with a joy that outshone the sun. "Preserved in my Father's will, untouched by corruption. The first garden was but a shadow of what was to come." My mind reeled. Eden was not lost, merely hidden, waiting beyond time's veil. And here it thrived, a promise fulfilled, a glimpse of what was intended before the fall of man. We approached a grove of trees, their trunks glowing softly from within as if carrying sunlight in their veins. At their center stood one that dwarfed the rest, its branches arched in perfect symmetry, heavy with fruit that pulsed with light. Its roots spread wide, drinking from a pool that mirrored the sky. I needed no explanation. Every part of me knew. The tree of life, the source from which all life had been meant to flow unbroken. Jesus smiled at my awe. Here, the righteous dwell in peace, awaiting the fullness of time. Their sorrows forgotten, their trials but shadows in the dawn. I saw them then, countless souls walking paths of light, their eyes clear and free. Some I recognized from the stories of Scripture, others were unknown but radiated a glory that spoke of battles fought and victories won. They turned as we passed, eyes bright with welcome, but unburdened by the questions that still burned within me. I wanted to ask so much, about the tree, about the souls, about the mysteries that seemed woven into every leaf. But before I could speak, a sudden breeze stirred, carrying with it a scent that was both sweet and sharp, like cedar and wild honey. The river's song deepened, and a shadow fell across the path. A figure emerged, robed in white but bearing scars that glinted like stars against his hands. His eyes met mine, ancient, sorrowful, yet brimming with a joy that defied understanding. "Not all have found rest," Jesus murmured, his voice a river running deep. "There is more to see." And before I could grasp the fullness of his words, the light shifted once more, and I was drawn forward, deeper into the mystery of heaven's design. The warmth of the eternal Eden faded, replaced by a chill that pricked my spirit, not of dread, but of vastness. I was ascending faster than thought, through layers of brilliance that melted into the next without pause. Stars flared past, each a living fire that sang as it spun. It was then I realized I was no longer on a path of gold or amid fragrant groves, but moving through the fabric of the cosmos itself. "Behold," Jesus spoke, his voice woven with the hum of 1,000 stars, "the fourth heaven, the the realm of celestial bodies. Space unfurled around us, endless and alive, a tapestry of galaxies swirling like jewels upon velvet. Suns blazed with hues no earthly sky had known, emerald and crimson, violet and gold, each pulse a heartbeat in the chest of infinity. Planets moved in silent symphony, rings glittering with ice and fire, while nebulae stretched like divine brushstrokes across the void. I stared breathless, as moons turned in tranquil orbits, their surfaces gleaming silver. Rivers of stardust flowed between worlds, shimmering with particles of light that seemed to whisper secrets in voices too ancient to decipher. There was no darkness here, only layers of light, soft, radiant, commanding awe and reverence. We moved effortlessly, passing suns whose flares danced like angelic wings. Stars leaned close, their energies singing hymns that resonated in my bones. Among them, I saw forms, figures cloaked in radiance, their eyes like molten sapphire, guiding the orbits with hands that glimmered like polished crystal. Angels, Jesus revealed, as if hearing my silent wonder. Appointed stewards of the cosmos, maintaining the order decreed since the foundations of time. I watched as one angel stretched forth a hand, and a comet, burning with emerald flame, shifted its path with a sigh of light. Another spread wings of fire, stirring nebulae into patterns that blazed like banners across the heavens. Their faces were serene, yet their eyes held a power that made my spirit tremble. Creatures both ancient and unwearied, their purpose etched into the bones of the universe. Why? I managed, my voice a tremor against the vastness. Why show me this? To understand, Jesus replied, his eyes never leaving the stars. Just as the sun rises and sets by my Father's command, so do all things move in appointed time. Nothing is without order, for my Father is not a God of chaos, but of purpose. His words unfurled like scrolls, revealing mysteries hidden beneath the obvious. Time itself seemed woven into these celestial bodies, their paths a divine script written in the ink of stars. I saw seasons unfold upon distant worlds, harvests ripen beneath foreign suns, oceans glitter with waves that bowed in time with the heavens. Even here, Jesus continued, his gaze gentle yet unrelenting, the rebellion of old left scars. And I saw them, fractures in space where darkness festered, shadows where light faltered. Stars shivered, dimming as echoes of battles long past rippled through them. It was a reminder that not all was peace, that war had raged even in these heights, leaving wounds yet to be healed. But my Father's will prevails, Jesus declared, his eyes fierce with certainty. The rebellion was cast down, the darkness bound, and in time, even these wounds shall be mended. A planet drifted close, oceans glistening with light. Upon its surface, I saw cities of crystal, spires that caught the light of nearby suns and refracted it into rainbows that stretched across continents. Beings walked there, tall, cloaked in light, their faces serene as they moved in worship, their voices a hymn that vibrated through the stars. Who are they? I breathed, eyes wide. Watchers, Jesus answered. Not those who fell, but those who kept their first estate, guardians of the outer realms. They turned as one, eyes aglow with reverence as Jesus passed, their songs rising in waves of light and sound that wrapped around us. Yet, beneath their worship, I sensed a readiness, a vigilant power, unspent but present, guarding against threats unseen. I understood then, this was a realm where order reigned, where the balance was kept by hands both visible and unseen. A reflection of divine authority, where every star, every orbit, every breath of wind across alien seas moved by command, not chance. The realization settled deep, reverberating with a truth that brought both awe and peace. The same God who held the cosmos in order knew every hair upon my head, every thought, every fear. Come, Jesus beckoned, a smile in his eyes. There is more yet to see. And with that, the stars flared bright once more, and we soared onward, deeper still into the mysteries of heaven. The radiance of the fourth heaven faded swiftly, replaced by a somber light, soft and pale like dawn's first breath. The warmth was gone, replaced by a chill that reached into my spirit, yet not of malice, rather, a sorrow so profound it weighed upon the very air. We descended slowly, the silence thick, pressing. Below stretched a vast expanse of what seemed like endless plains, veiled in mist that gleamed silver, rolling in waves as if stirred by a mournful wind. Trees stood scattered, their leaves a deep indigo that rustled softly despite no breeze. Their trunks, smooth and gleaming with a faint inner glow, seemed to pulse with a slow, steady light, alive yet weary. This, Jesus spoke, his voice a balm against the sorrow, is the fifth heaven, the realm of the sorrowful angels. His words turned my gaze to the plains, and I saw them, figures draped in garments of twilight blue, heads bowed beneath the weight of unseen burdens. Their wings, vast and intricate as woven glass, hung limp, feathers shimmering dully, as if the light that touched them could not stay. They moved slowly, hands clasped, eyes hidden beneath hoods that shadowed their faces, but from beneath those shadows came a sound, a soft, ceaseless weeping that twisted my heart. The sorrow in their voices was unlike any grief of earth. It was ancient, stretching beyond time, a lament not for themselves but for others. They moved as if in procession, weaving through the mist in paths that crossed and recrossed, never hurried, never resting. Some paused beneath the trees, fingertips brushing the leaves as if seeking comfort, yet their tears fell still, liquid crystal that vanished into the mist. "Why do they weep?" I whispered, barely able to force the words past the lump in my throat. Jesus' eyes softened, and the light around him seemed to dim with shared sorrow. "These are the intercessors," he answered. "Angels who bore prayers that went unanswered, cries that echoed through the ages. They weep for the world that rejects my Father's love, for souls that turn away even as his hand reaches forth." I watched, heartbreaking, as one angel paused, clutching something unseen to his chest, hands trembling, wings shivering with grief. A sigh escaped him, and it was like the whisper of autumn wind through bare branches, a sound that spoke of battles fought and lost, of love spurned and mercy refused. "But they failed." The question slipped out, raw and hesitant. "Not failed," Jesus corrected gently. "Their tasks were heavy, their burdens not of their choosing. Yet, they bore them without rebellion, without turning away. This sorrow is not punishment, but love unspent, mercy unreceived." He moved forward, and I followed, the mist parting before us like a curtain. One angel looked up as we approached, and from beneath his hood, I glimpsed eyes like shattered sapphire, brilliant, yet fractured with pain. His tears glinted, leaving trails of light that faded upon his cheeks. Jesus reached out, placing a hand upon the angel's shoulder, and for an instant, the sorrow eased, the angel's wings lifting just slightly. But the lament did not cease, the mourning not silenced. The angel's gaze met mine briefly, and in it, I saw stories, visions of kingdoms risen and fallen, of cities in ashes, of hands outstretched and unanswered. Grace is not freedom from sorrow, but the strength to endure it. Jesus said, his eyes never leaving the angels. "Even in heaven love bears wounds, for my Father's heart grieves for every soul lost, every prayer unheard not by his will, but by man's refusal." I glanced back at the angels, my heart aching with a weight that felt unbearable. Yet, in the depths of their mourning, I saw something else, a glimmer of light within their tears, a quiet hope that did not falter despite the darkness they carried. "They do not leave," I murmured half to myself. "Why do they stay if the sorrow is so great?" "Because hope endures," Jesus answered, a faint smile gracing his lips. "And my Father's plan has not yet reached its end. They mourn for a time, but joy will come in the morning." At his words, the mist seemed to thin, light piercing through in beams of gold and crimson. For a moment, the angels paused, heads lifting as if hearing a distant call. Their wings shifted, and the weeping softened, not silenced, but no longer hopeless. As we ascended, the air grew warmer, infused with a fragrance unlike any on earth, something between jasmine and rain-soaked earth, sweet and fresh. The light intensified, pure and golden, weaving patterns that shifted and breathed as if alive. My eyes stung with its brilliance, yet I could not turn away. Then, all at once, we broke through, emerging into a vast hall that seemed carved from sunlight and storm clouds, pillars of shimmering crystal rising high into a dome that sparkled with 1,000 hues. The floor beneath our feet gleamed like molten gold, rippling with reflections of white fire. But it was not the splendor of the hall that stole my breath, it was the beings within. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of angels stood arrayed in concentric circles around a central dais, each more radiant than the last. Their robes flowed like liquid pearl, and their wings, unfurled and majestic, gleamed with every color of dawn. Some bore swords that blazed with blue flame, others leaned upon staffs crowned with spheres of light. Their eyes, deep and unsearchable, glowed with purpose and resolve. "This is the sixth heaven," Jesus said, his voice a steady anchor. "The council of dominion, those entrusted with the governance of the realms, both seen and unseen." My gaze was drawn to the center of the hall, where a throne of emerald and gold hovered just above the ground, vacant yet exuding an authority that pulsed in the air. Around it stood 7 archangels, distinct in glory, their eyes fixed upon a massive scroll that hung in midair, its edges illuminated with a fire that did not burn. One of these archangels stepped forward, his armor a deep silver, eyes like molten steel. He spoke, voice resonating like thunder contained, his words a language I did not know yet understood perfectly. He spoke of kingdoms and judgments, of wars and realms unseen, of the prayers of saints rising like incense. His words were measured, neither hurried nor hesitant, and as he spoke, the others listened, some inclining their heads, others gripping their swords tighter. The scroll turned, pages moving as if by a breath unseen, each new line of divine decree casting ripples of light through the hall. I stared, transfixed, as symbols ignited upon the parchment, wheels within wheels, eyes and wings, rivers of fire and trees heavy with fruit. Each symbol a mystery, each glow a promise of things yet to be. They rule? I asked, voice hushed with awe. Not rule, Jesus corrected, his eyes soft with understanding. They execute my Father's will, bearing his commands to the farthest reaches of creation. No decree is their own, no decision made apart from his counsel. One angel, smaller than the rest, stood at the edge of the assembly, clutching a slender staff. His wings trembled slightly, and his eyes, a vivid green, darted nervously. He stepped forward hesitantly, voice soft but clear, presenting a plea, a petition for a people near the brink of destruction, for mercy to stay a hand of judgment just a little longer. For a breathless moment, silence reigned, the assembly waiting. Then the archangel at the center dipped his head, and a spark of light leapt from his hand to the scroll. The page glowed, and the smaller angel's shoulders sagged in relief, gratitude brightening his eyes. I turned to Jesus, confusion furrowing my brow. They petition? Even here? His smile was gentle. Obedience is not mindless, nor devotion without understanding. They plead not against my Father's will but for it, to see mercy extended wherever justice allows. I watched as another angel approached, bearing chains that smoldered with dark fire. His eyes, amber and fierce, narrowed as he spoke of realms in rebellion, of powers and principalities entrenched deep in darkness. His words were crisp, sharp as iron, and as he spoke, the hall seemed to darken, shadows gathering at the edges. Yet even as he spoke of war, the light from the scroll did not dim. The throne remained steady, the emerald glow pulsing with a serene power that made the shadows falter. Does darkness reach even here? I asked, voice tight. No, Jesus replied, his gaze firm. But the knowledge of it does. They stand guard, ever vigilant, carrying out decrees that will bring darkness to its end. As he spoke, one angel turned, eyes meeting mine, eyes of pure white flame, without pupil or iris, seeing through flesh and soul alike. I gasped, instinctively stepping back, but Jesus' hand on my shoulder was steady. Fear not, he murmured. Their gaze is not judgment, but truth. They see what is, what has been, and what yet could be. For a heartbeat, I saw through those eyes, visions of earth and heaven intertwined, of storms and harvests, of gates flung wide and chains shattered. I saw fields of wheat bending in golden waves, the tares plucked out, cast into fire. I saw battles and banquets, weddings and wars, an endless tapestry woven with threads of light and shadow. I stumbled, gasping, my vision blurring with the weight of it all. Jesus' arm steadied me, his eyes compassionate. The council deliberates, he said softly, but the final word is my Father's alone. The scroll turned once more, glowing brighter, and a song began, soft at first, a hum beneath the words, rising and falling like tides. It was a sound of unyielding devotion, of power bridled by love, and it washed over me, filling my bones with warmth. And as the song swelled, the hall blazed with light, the scroll unfurled in full, and the council bowed as one, wings sweeping wide, faces to the golden floor, voices lifted in perfect harmony. The light expanded, engulfing us, pulling us forward into a brilliance that burned with promise and power. The brilliance was so overwhelming, I instinctively shielded my eyes, though I had no earthly body to do so. The light was not just seen, it was felt. Waves of holiness, ancient and endless, coursed through me. I knew, without being told, that we were ascending into realms few had ever glimpsed. Jesus moved beside me, his gaze fixed ahead, unblinking and resolute. There was something new in his eyes, a blend of sorrow and unshakable authority. I wanted to ask what lay ahead, but words failed, swallowed by the radiance. We ascended swiftly, and the atmosphere shifted, thickening with awe. The surroundings stretched into vast expanses of shimmering gold and translucent crystals, suspended in an infinite sea of light. My spirit trembled, aware that we were approaching the eighth heaven, a realm where mysteries not even the angels could fully comprehend were unveiled. We emerged into a domain so vast and luminous that it seemed to contain the reflections of all creation. Before us stood colossal wells, each overflowing with living waters that glinted like molten diamonds. These were not ordinary wells, but conduits of God's wisdom, wells from which angels themselves drew understanding. As we moved closer, I saw angelic beings of indescribable beauty, robed in garments woven from the light itself, drawing waters with vessels that changed colors with every ripple. They did not drink, but poured the water into golden channels that coursed away, branching infinitely, carrying divine wisdom to all corners of creation. One of the angels, immense and radiant, turned toward us. Without words, knowledge poured into my mind, a revelation so immense that my spirit quaked under its weight. I saw fragments of God's design, His sovereignty orchestrating every event in time. The rise and fall of empires, the births and deaths of countless souls, the prayers whispered in darkness, all woven seamlessly into a tapestry only He could comprehend. I gasped, or would have, had I lungs to draw breath. Jesus' hand rested on my shoulder, steadying me, His eyes understanding. "Human wisdom is a drop," He said softly, "but my Father's wisdom is the ocean." We ascended further, passing through what seemed like veils of living fire that parted at Jesus' command. We entered a colossal hall, its walls inscribed with radiant symbols that pulsed like living veins. Rows upon rows of ancient tomes stretched endlessly, each bound in material that gleamed like polished stars. Angels moved among the shelves with deliberate grace, their eyes ablaze with purpose. Some bore quills dipped in light, transcribing events with precision, acts of faith and betrayal, words spoken in secret, choices unseen by human eyes. No deed, however small, was unrecorded. My gaze fell upon one book, slightly ajar. The script within glowed softly, and to my horror, I recognized scenes from my own life. Moments of kindness and cruelty, of courage and cowardice, played before my eyes in vivid clarity. Even thoughts I believed forgotten were preserved, unaltered. Shame burned through me, but Jesus' voice was gentle. "Nothing is hidden that will not be revealed. But grace has the final word if you accept it." His words echoed, soothing yet firm, as the light of the hall intensified, drawing us upward. We pierced the final veil and entered a realm where the very light seemed to sing. Before us rose a throne, vast and unapproachable, circled by living creatures covered in eyes and wings, their voices a ceaseless hymn. The one who sat upon the throne was veiled in light, so pure I could not gaze directly. Yet even with my eyes averted, I felt His gaze penetrate every hidden corner of my soul. The ground was a sea of crystal, reflecting visions of the past, present, and future. I saw nations in turmoil, families in prayer, lone figures crying out in the night. I saw the earth trembling, the heavens unfolding, and the books from the hall below brought forth by towering angels. Terror seized me, for even the light itself seemed to judge, to weigh and measure. But then Jesus spoke, His voice unwavering. "Mercy triumphs over judgment for those who will receive it." At His words, the weight of my guilt lifted, replaced by a profound sorrow for those who would reject such grace. I understood then that this was not just a place of judgment, but of ultimate justice, where no wrong was ignored, yet every sin could be covered by His blood. The light began to recede, and I felt a sudden ache, a yearning to remain. Jesus turned to me, His eyes aglow with both grief and fierce love. "Your time is not yet," He said. Tell my people that I am coming soon, that every promise will be fulfilled, that my delay is mercy, not forgetfulness." His gaze bore into mine, unrelenting. "Warn them not to grow weary or cold. Tell them I have not forgotten them, that every tear is counted, every prayer heard, and that the door of grace is still open, but not forever." The force of His words resonated through me, binding to my spirit with unbreakable resolve. I knew this was my mission, the reason I was being sent back. Without warning, I was falling, rushing downward, the light dimming into shadows, the celestial choirs fading. I crashed into my body with a force that sent agony through every nerve. My eyes shot open to the harsh glow of hospital lights, machines beeping frantically. My chest burned with every breath, yet my spirit blazed brighter. Tears coursed down my cheeks, not from the pain but from the sheer, unbearable longing for that realm of glory. I had been sent back, entrusted with a message that could not wait. The days following my return were a blur of white coats and hushed conversations. I lay in that hospital bed, my body heavy and aching, but my spirit was ablaze. It was as if I had been split in two, half of me tethered to this world, and the other half still wandering the golden pathways of the heavens. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw His face, heard His voice, those words, "Tell them I am coming soon," thundering like a drumbeat in my mind. Nothing looked the same after that. Not the sun filtering through my window, not the hands of the nurses as they adjusted my four, not even my own reflection staring back at me with eyes that had glimpsed eternity. Colors were richer, shadows deeper. My heart felt like it was burning, not with pain, but with purpose. The trivial things that used to bother me, the deadlines, the bills, the petty arguments, they melted away, insignificant in the light of what I had seen. I couldn't stay silent. I had to tell someone, everyone. My hands shook as I called my family, my voice cracking as I tried to describe glory with human words. I watched tears spill down my mother's face, my brother's eyes widen, disbelief and wonder battling within them. I spoke until my throat was raw, until the nurses insisted I rest, but I couldn't. How could I, knowing what I knew? Life didn't slow down to accommodate my transformation. The doctors were baffled at my recovery, labeling it a miracle, but refusing to look deeper. I couldn't blame them. How do you explain walking, breathing, and laughing again after being so close to the other side? How do you tell someone that the veil between life and eternity is as thin as a breath? In the weeks that followed, I became obsessed with the Bible. Verses I'd skimmed over before now glowed with meaning. Passages about heaven, about Jesus' return, about the urgency of repentance. They leapt from the pages, demanding to be shared. The urgency was relentless. I couldn't escape the weight of Jesus' command. I started speaking at churches, community centers, even on street corners when the urgency grew too fierce to contain. I saw lives change, not because of me, but because His words held power. The more I shared, the stronger the fire inside me burned. The fear of rejection, of ridicule, crumbled beneath the memory of His eyes that had seen every part of me and loved me still. But it wasn't just strangers who were transformed. My relationships, once strained and brittle, softened. I forgave people I'd sworn never to speak to again. I found myself embracing those I once judged. My prayers were no longer lists of complaints, but conversations with a friend whose love I had touched, if only for a moment. Death was no longer a shadow lurking at the edge of my thoughts. How could it be, when I had seen the other side and found it more real than this one? My fear was replaced by longing, a deep, unquenchable yearning for the place where sorrow and pain are swallowed up by light. If you're listening to this, it's not an accident. I'm not here to scare you or to guilt trip you. I'm here to tell you that heaven is real, more real than anything you can see or touch. And Jesus is alive, not as a figure from ancient texts, but as a king who knows your name, who aches for you to turn back to Him. Your choices matter, every thought, every action, every moment. I saw it, recorded and weighed with precision and mercy. But it's not about being perfect. It's about saying yes to the one who already paid the price for every wrong turn. Please don't wait. Seek Him now while there's still time. Open your heart, even if it's cracked and bleeding. His hands are scarred too, and He knows how to heal wounds deeper than flesh. If this message has stirred something in you, I urge you, subscribe, stay connected, and keep searching the scriptures. The time is short, and He is coming soon. This isn't the end of the story. It's only the beginning.